The story began in a mysterious hospital located by the sea where a girl named Maddie was looking at the camera with fear-filled eyes. She was about to undergo a dangerous operation very soon. As the camera slowly pulled back, it became clear that a strange and terrifying child was attached to his back, which, though physically separate, was still an integral part of him. Its mind was so highly developed that it could control nearby objects without even touching them, and in a fit of rage, it could become lethal to anyone. Because of this, doctors had to restrain Maddie and surgically separate that part. However, both their minds remained connected to each other, so it was impossible to completely separate it, because doing so could have cost Maddie her life. So they sewed a part of that baby's brain inside Maddie's skull. From here, the story fast-forwarded 20 years, where that same girl had grown up to be quite beautiful and was about to become a mother. But she had no idea that what was about to happen would shake her to her core. As soon as Maddie arrived home, she saw her husband watching a boxing match. Then, without saying a single word, she picked up the remote and turned off the TV. But for this small act, her husband erupted in a furious rage, immediately stood up and slammed Maddie's head against the wall, without knowing that this very mistake would later become the cause of her death. Suddenly, Maddie realized she had a deep head injury which panicked her badly, and ignoring the pain, she immediately hid inside the room. When she saw her wound, blood was flowing from the back of her head and her condition was deteriorating. But Maddie didn't know that soon her husband would pay the price for it. As night fell, the husband, resting on the sofa, was suddenly awakened by a peculiar noise. Following the sound, he made his way to the kitchen and discovered that the mixer was running all by itself, even though no one else was there. Seeing this, he was utterly astonished, and just as he reached out his hand to switch it off, the fridge door behind him suddenly swung open on its own. Seeing all this, he was completely stunned, unable to grasp what was truly happening. At that very moment, he suspected Maddie was trying to scare him. Then loud noises suddenly erupted from the living room, and hearing them, he rushed there at once. Going inside, he saw a woman dressed in black sitting on the sofa, constantly changing TV channels. The moment he switched on the light, that woman suddenly vanished. He felt as if his eyes had perhaps played a trick on him, but the cushion springing back up on the sofa clearly indicated that someone had just been sitting there. He was still lost in this thought when suddenly that dark shadow appeared right behind him. Hearing her husband scream, Maddie suddenly awoke in her upstairs room. As her gaze fell upon the blood on the pillow, she instantly touched her head and realized the blood was still flowing. Panicked, she rushed downstairs. However, upon reaching the bottom, she discovered her husband's neck was twisted and he was found mysteriously dead. Meanwhile, her gaze fell upon that same dark shadow sitting nearby, which was present there with its hair disheveled. As soon as she saw it, she became terrified and started running straight upstairs. Just as she began to close the door, the dark shadow forcefully pushed her, throwing her far away, causing her to fall to the ground and lose consciousness. A short while later, following complaints from the neighbors, the police arrived at the scene and were shocked by the condition of the body. The most peculiar thing was that there were absolutely no signs of forced entry anywhere in the house, and it was completely baffling how the killer had managed to get inside. To ascertain the truth, the inspector assigned to the case promptly arrived at the hospital, hoping to interrogate Maddie. But after losing her child, Maddie was so utterly broken that she was in no state to explain anything. Pause. Approximately 15 days later, when Maddie returned home from the hospital, a peculiar incident occurred once more. She observed that the streetlight just outside her house was suddenly flickering all by itself. During this time, she spotted a man in black clothes approaching her from a distance. Upon seeing this, her state of mind deteriorated once more, and her fear came rushing back. She immediately rushed downstairs and quickly secured all the doors and windows of the house. However, just as she went to do the laundry, suddenly a strange woman's face appeared on the mirror. The very next moment, the black shadow moved swiftly, grabbed the woman's hair, and slammed her forcefully to the ground. At that very instant, the whole room's atmosphere began to change mysteriously. The very next moment, Maddie found herself inside that woman's house. She couldn't understand how all this was happening. At that very moment, he witnessed the man dressed in black grab the trophy, then lunge at the woman and repeatedly strike her head like a madman. In just a few seconds, Maddie was back in her home. When she saw everything around her was fine, she thought it was all just a scary dream, but she didn't know it wasn't a dream, but reality. Very soon, the police arrived at the crime scene. They quickly realized that Maddie's husband and the other woman had been murdered in an identical manner, which made it evident that the same killer was responsible for both deaths. However, the woman who was killed was named Glenn, and she was the one who had performed Maddie's operation 2 decades earlier. In his house, there were files of his old patients, which made the police suspect the killer could be one of them. Based on this suspicion, the inspector took all the files to the station and began meticulously scrutinizing every single case. Meanwhile, when Maddie went to bed that night, she discovered an unknown large man lying right beside her. The moment she saw this terrifying sight, she began to tremble uncontrollably with fear. Her entire body felt completely numb, and she found herself unable to move a single muscle. Then, quite suddenly, that same dark shadow emerged from behind her and slowly, eerily climbed up onto the large man. In the very next moment, he pulled out a large knife and began to repeatedly stab that man. As the dark shadow vanished, Maddie woke up screaming. Frightened by the continuous incidents, she immediately went to the police station with her sister and told the inspector everything, but no one believed her story. Instead, everyone laughed, thinking she was crazy. Seeing this, her sister got furious and said, "If nothing is proven, then send us to a mental asylum." Hearing this, the inspector became a little serious. In a short while, Maddie found the address of the stout man over the internet who resided in the building across the street. Then Inspector Black, along with sister, arrived at that location for investigation. When the four of them reached there, they saw that indeed the same man was lying dead in his house, just as Maddie had described. This convinced the inspector that Maddie had seen the killer. After this, the police had a sketch of the killer drawn based on Maddie's statement, which looked exactly like a terrifying, ghostly person. Seeing this, Black's sister again felt Maddie was probably making up a story. Still, Maddie said nothing and quietly left. During the investigation, the inspector found a strange case in Dr. Glenn's file. The patient's name was Emily, a little girl who was only 7 years old. She often used to say that she saw strange things and demons. To cure her, Dr. Glenn, along with 2 other doctors, had devised a special treatment plan. The surprising thing was that the very same Emily had later changed her name to Maddie. Knowing this, the inspector became suspicious. He immediately looked at the old photograph of the 3 doctors. Upon seeing the photo, he immediately realized that 2 doctors had already lost their lives, and now the last remaining doctor was next. Meanwhile, as Maddie was getting ready at home, she suddenly caught a glimpse of that last doctor in the mirror, and the very next moment, she mysteriously found herself inside the doctor's house. It wasn't much later that the inspector also arrived at the scene. Upon opening the door, he discovered the doctor lying dead in the bathtub. Maddie, seeing the inspector, tried to offer help, but he couldn't see her, nor could he hear her voice. Just then, the same monster in black clothes leaped from the roof, pounced on the inspector, knocked him to the ground, and immediately fled from there. But the inspector, continuing his pursuit, reached the interior of a deserted building where, all of a sudden, the monster leapt from above and launched a fatal assault on the inspector. However, the inspector was also fully trained and prepared. Using the sheer power of his firearm, he began to bring the creature under control. Witnessing the tables turn, the demon abandoned the battle, swiftly ascending and making his escape. However, the inspector became absolutely certain that Maddie had some connection to the demise of these 3 doctors. Driven by this strong suspicion, he immediately went to Maddie's house, attempting to uncover the truth. But Maddie couldn't recall anything from before she was 8 years old. Out of necessity, the inspector called a psychologist to learn the truth, so Maddie's old memories could be brought back through hypnosis. The moment Maddie delved into her memories, everything became clear to her. Actually, the child attached to the back of her head before the operation, she used to call him Gabriel. Gabriel would control his mind, making him see terrifying things that didn't exist in reality. But after the operation, when he was suppressed deep inside his head, his control was completely gone. He then began to possess other people's bodies to kill the doctors who had imprisoned him. After hearing all of this, the inspector found her words quite strange. He sensed that Maddie was concealing some important truth, but just before he could manage to ask anything else, suddenly, a woman plummeted from the roof right onto the floor. Seeing this sight, Maddie completely broke down, and everyone present was stunned. Until now, everyone believed Maddie was innocent, but the truth began to emerge. In reality, a woman had been held captive on the roof of Maddie's house, and the killer's clothes and knife were also recovered from there. So, suspicion immediately fell on Maddie, and the police promptly took her into custody. However, Maddie repeatedly insisted that she had done nothing, claiming Gabriel was behind it all. Just then, an unknown call suddenly came through on the inspector's phone. During their conversation, he realized it was Gabriel, who had imprisoned that woman specifically to frame Maddie. But upon hearing that voice, a strong suspicion arose in the inspector's mind. He believed that this was all Maddie's trick to prove his own innocence, so the inspector, showing his good judgment, immediately arrested Maddie and put him in jail. However, Maddie's sister still firmly believed that Maddie was innocent. So, to uncover the truth, she immediately set off for the very hospital where Maddie's operation had taken place. But upon arriving there, she discovered the hospital was completely abandoned with no sign of anyone nearby. Still, she went inside, and after much searching, she found Maddie's operation file, which she immediately brought home. When she watched the videotape, the shocking truth was revealed. The child residing behind Maddie's head possessed immense power from birth. He didn't merely show her terrifying visions, instead he would seize complete control of Maddie's body, manipulating her to act entirely according to his own will, and he would not even flinch from taking a life. For this very reason, doctors imprisoned him deep inside Maddie's skull, forever. As a result, his control over her was almost completely gone. But the day Maddie's husband slammed her against the wall, that jolt caused Gabriel trapped inside her skull to wake up and come out. He then controlled Maddie and committed several murders. The moment this truth was revealed, Maddie's sister became terribly distressed. Meanwhile, in the prison, some thugs, perceiving Maddie as weak, started to constantly torment her. She was all alone and completely helpless before them. Therefore, they started to beat her quite mercilessly. But as soon as a thug pulled her hair, suddenly the prison lights started flickering and the atmosphere became terrifying. The next moment, the goon's hands were covered in blood and Maddie's body began to tremble violently. Then suddenly, a terrifying face emerged from inside his head, and in the blink of an eye, Gabriel took control of his body. The goons who had seen him as weak moments ago now found themselves in danger. He began mercilessly slaughtering the goons one by one. In no time, all the goons lay defeated before him, and the entire prison was drenched in blood. But just as she was about to take down the last thug, the guard heard the commotion and opened fire. But Gabriel used the thug's body as a shield and, taking cover, swiftly attacked and brutally eliminated the guard as well. Meanwhile, Maddie's sister immediately informed the inspector everything about Gabriel. Suddenly, strange screams began to echo from inside the police station. The instant the inspector stepped inside, he was utterly shocked by the gruesome scene. All the prisoners and many guards were lying dead on the floor, and Maddie had vanished. No one had any inkling that Maddie had broken through the door into the evidence room, where she took her weapons and began a bloodbath in the station hall. Gabriel then proceeded to kill several policemen one by one. He had complete control over Maddie's body and kept attacking relentlessly, even while running backward. His fighting skills were so dangerous that no police officer could stand against him for more than a few seconds. Meanwhile, the inspector arrived and loudly called Maddie's name, trying to bring him back to consciousness. But the truth was that Maddie was still confined within the jail, completely unaware of anything Gabriel had done. The moment she saw the inspector with the weapon, she believed he was the real killer. In that fear, she even abandoned her intention to regain control of herself. Seizing the opportunity, Gabriel attacked the inspector, causing his gun to fall from his hand. Black's sister also tried to catch him, but she couldn't stop him either. After this, Gabriel escaped from jail. The inspector immediately realized that Gabriel's next target was the woman who fell from Maddie's rooftop, and Gabriel was now heading to the hospital to finish her off. Meanwhile, Maddie's sister had also reached the hospital to immediately shift that woman to a safe place, but the police stationed outside had strict orders not to let anyone in. That's why they didn't allow Maddie's sister to go inside either. Just then, quite suddenly, the corridor lights began to flicker. The police officer suddenly grabbed his chest, then he slowly bent down. Maddie's sister couldn't understand what was happening at all, so she immediately rushed forward to help the guard. But at that very moment, his chest suddenly exploded with a loud bang, and he was killed instantly. Seeing this, she trembled with fear, then immediately ran towards the room, trying to close the door. But just then, Gabriel appeared there. He kicked the door down with a powerful blow. The moment Gabriel stepped inside, he used his power to shatter all the electronic devices in the room, causing Maddie's sister to tremble with fear. Enraged, Gabriel pulled out his knife and started advancing to kill her, while Maddie began screaming loudly to stop him. Just then, the inspector arrived. Without wasting a single moment, he fired 2 shots, wounding Gabriel. Just as he was about to murder Gabriel, Maddie's sister intervened and stopped him. However, this decision had severe consequences for her. In the very next moment, Gabriel stabbed the inspector directly in the chest with a knife, and he fell to the ground right there. Now, Maddie's sister was completely alone. She picked up the gun to save her own life, but she couldn't fire it because Gabriel was inside Maddie, and killing him would mean taking Maddie's life. So she kept calling Maddie by his name, hoping to bring him back to his senses. However, Gabriel had completely taken over Maddie's body, controlling it with all his strength. Then, without warning, he lifted the hospital bed and hurled it at Maddie's sister, crushing her beneath it. Maddie was watching all of this unfold, but her body was completely beyond her control, and Maddie's sister was perfectly aware of this situation. So despite the excruciating pain, she began her final attempt to bring her back to consciousness. She murdered your children. It was because of her that you were experiencing these miscarriages. The moment she heard her voice, everything suddenly became crystal clear to Maddie, and the anger deep inside her just erupted. She was trying with every ounce of her strength to regain full control over her own body once again. But at that moment, Gabriel shot her sister. Following that, Gabriel turned around and finished off the woman lying on the bed. Precisely at that instant, Maddie's voice started to resonate deep inside Gabriel. He perceived the world around him undergoing a transformation, and he realized that Maddie had finally awakened and regained her complete control. Then, quite abruptly, he regained consciousness and discovered that Maddie's sister was still alive. Upon witnessing this, Gabriel was thrown into a state of utter confusion. He didn't understand a single thing. Then Maddie made him realize the truth. The very power he had used to make her dance to his every whim until now was about to be turned against him. Maddie, seizing that very moment, completely overpowered Gabriel and imprisoned him within herself forever. As soon as this happened, the back of his head began to seal itself and Gabriel's face vanished forever. Slowly, everything began to normalize and the situation returned to its former state. And with that, this wonderful story came to an end.